Hello and welcome to How to Create a Centralized Database Environment. Thank you everyone for joining me today. My name is Michellea David. Please hold all your questions to the end of the presentation. Let me make sure that I'm not muted. Okay, so I am here. The slides have been uploaded to GitHub, and I have the GitHub location right here. If you'd like, it's a good time to take a screenshot of the screen. So if you have any questions at the end that I don't get to, or you remember a question later on when you're trying to implement a centralized SSIS environment, then you have my email address. Please contact me anytime. And all of the code, the slides, my notes, everything is on this GitHub area right here. Give you a few seconds to screenshot this. All right.
And just to confirm, you want me to hold questions till the end, right?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Erin. All right, a little about me. I have been in DBA world for 20 years. So I have 20 years experience in databases. That started out in Oracle, moved into SQL Server. Started out with Oracle 9.9 and SQL Server 2000. I was a Java programmer in the beginning at Sun Microsystems, which was bought out by Oracle. So now it's Oracle. And in my prior life, I was also a system administrator. So I have a Solaris admin certification. That's a Unix certification. I've worked for companies like Sun Microsystems and Los Alamos National Laboratory. And currently, I am COVID unemployed, unfortunately, and looking for a job. So if you know of any senior, lead, or management DBA positions, please contact me. And again, my email address is at the bottom of the page, SQL Michellea David @gmail.com. All right, today we will be discussing how to create a centralized database environment, actually centralized SSIS environment. Our itinerary is, what is a centralized SSIS environment and why do you want to create a centralized environment? The pros and cons, the steps on how to design a centralized SSIS environment, permission issues that you will run into going from server to server. We're going to talk about those. Which server is utilizing the CPU and memory and where to add the memory when you need it. Where will the job execution information be stored? Some suggestions for next steps. How to create process log tables, procedures, and load your statistics. And then I'll take questions. In between all of these, we have several demos. So although I have screenshots of how to do certain things, we will also have a demo on that so that you can see how it works live time. What is a centralized SSIS environment? A centralized environment is all your jobs, all your code, statistics in one centralized location. The jobs will reach out from the centralized server to another server, select the data, then come back through the network to the original SSIS server and finish the process. Procedures can be created to store job set timing, information, and bring errors into one centralized table on the same SSIS catalog server. And the great thing is for DBAs, like myself, everything will be in one place. So when you get up in the morning, you go to one table, you query the table, you look for errors, you find everything you need, instead of what normally happens, having to touch each individual server and find the jobs that failed and then fix them and find out what the error is. And the hardest thing is at 3 in the morning when you have to get up and you just got that pager, figuring out what it is that failed. With this environment, everything is in one table. So you just query the table, find the environment, find the job. It tells you the servers, and we'll get into all this. It's the best thing for the DBAs. Plus, well, let's get into pros and cons. All right, so reasons to use a centralized SSIS environment. There's only one server to review daily. That's huge. All jobs run from one server. So maintenance, all jobs, one server. There's one centralized code repository to maintain. All the code, statistics, errors, history for every server is stored on one SQL server to query. So as I was saying, as a DBA, I'm tired of putting code onto many different servers. I get one SSIS package from the developers, and I have to put it on development and QA and production. And with a centralized SSIS environment, what I do is I put it in my environment, and then I can create environment variables to run that code in development, QA, and production. And I can run different versions in each of them, and I can run the same code in each of them. There's many advantages to using a centralized environment, but I'm only listing a few here. There's only one central management location. That's huge. The packages are easy to scale by adding memory to that central server. The ETL workload is on the central server, so we keep the workload away from OLTP and OLAP databases. And lastly, but not least, standardize and control multiple SQL instances like development, QA, production from one SQL SSIS package. There are disadvantages, and one is the cost. The central server must be licensed. And two, remote data is actually copied over the network. So depending on your network speed, it can slow down the SSIS process, but not by much. I guess it depends on your subnet. How do we create a centralized SSIS environment? Well, the steps are, first, pick a server that you want to run the catalog on, set up the catalog. Create the SSIS package using project variables. Deploy the SSIS package to the central SSIS catalog. Set up the environment variables for each environment you want to run the code on. And an environment is usually a server. Link the environment to that package. Create a job to run the package. And in that job, include the environment you would like to run the code on. Let's go through each step. Create the SSIS catalog. In SQL Server, you right-click on Integration Services Catalog and select Create Catalog. Make sure you check the boxes, Enable CLR Integration, so we're on the little screenshot below. And also make sure you check the box, Enable Automatic Execution of Integration Services Stored Procedure at SQL Server Startup. Boy, that's hard to say. The Create Catalog screen will also ask for a password in case there's any encrypted information. So you'll need to provide that. Step 2, create an SSIS package with project variables. And so in this discussion, I assume that you guys already know how to code SSIS. Some of you may not. If you need SSIS coding help or you need a refresher, there's tons of information online. Go to Google, type in SSIS. There's YouTube. There's lots of people with information on how to create SSIS code. It would take too much time to put it into this presentation. So I'm just going over the basics, but feel free to learn a little bit more about SSIS and how to code. Here in this presentation, I'm going to show you how to create a package and a project parameter and link the two using environment variables. So here we'll open Visual Studio, create a new project, double click on project params, open and add a server variable, create a control flow task, and I'll show you this in the demo with the connection, and then go to connection properties and create an environment variable for the server name. And then we link the variable in the project variable. So if you look here on this slide, I show you where the server name is an expression, and it's linked to the project param project server. right, demo time. I am using Visual Studio 2019, so you may notice some differences from your version. Let's see. There we go. Let's go to control flow. In this presentation, I built a rebuild index task. This task uses a connection called connect. And the connect connection uses an expression for the server name, which is called project server. Now, where does this variable come from? If you see here under the project, you see project params. If you double click on that, this tab will come up and you'll see all of the variables that are set up for the entire project. So in an SSIS, you can have many different packages, and all of these packages can use the same project params. Here, I've created only the server for this one. I'm making it very basic. And I typed the value of my server 2. I have 2 database servers running on my laptop. So I chose 2 to be the value at this time. Go back to the package. I look at the expression. See project server. I go to my ellipsis, my 3 dots. This is how I pulled it in through system variables, project server. I pulled this over to the expression. If I evaluate the expression, you see that I have server 2. When I go in and look at the actual server name, you see that it's brought in the variable server 2. You also notice that in the data source.
Hey, Michellea.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. We're just seeing the slide.
Oh, wow. Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Well, let me go back through some of these then.
So all we're seeing is your slide deck right now. I'm not seeing whatever you've got for the demo.
You don't see the demo. Let's see where my share is. I bet I'm sharing one thing instead of my whole screen. Yep, that's what I did. Sorry, everyone.
There we go. That's okay.
Okay, let's go back. We have a rebuild index task. That's what my SSIS. Thank you, Erin, for stopping me. So
no problem.
The rebuild index task, SSIS. I was talking about the connection string. Here it's using the connect. And then my string is an expression, a project server. Now, where do I get this variable from? It's a project param. Project params can be used by any of the SSIS packages. If I double click on project params, we go to project params, and I typed in the name server. My value is server 2. I go to the connection, I see the expression, I go to the ellipsis next to the server name. Well, actually, let's go to the expression ellipsis. I set up server name, I connect it to project server. What I had done is I selected project server, brought it into the expression. I evaluate that expression, you see the number 2. You go into server name, you see that it's bringing in the variable or the value of server 2. It also shows in the data source as 2. If I change this project param value to 1, then my connect variable expression will reevaluate to 1, and my server name would change to 1. So that's how you do project params. In this case, I have done a project param for only the connection. You can do project params for any variable that you want to change the name of outside of the Visual Studio. And in your environment variables, you can use and change those project parameters. We cannot change package parameters with the environment variables. There are variables that are within the package. I didn't set up any here. but those are not changed through environment variables. You have to have project parameters. All right, let's go back to the presentation. Step 3. Erin, do you see my presentation again? My slides?
I do. You're good.
Oh, good. Okay, now I'm back on. Step 3, deploy the SSIS package in the SSIS catalog that was created with step 1. And in this screenshot, I show you that you right-click on the package name and you select deploy, and then you follow all of the directions to be able to deploy it into the SSIS catalog. Set up the environment variables. I'm going to show you this in the next demo, but you create the environment and then you name it. I did 2 environments, one for server 1 and one for server 2. After the environment is named, we need to find out what variable to put into the name field on the environment variable. So I'll keep this screen up in SSMS, SQL Server Management Studio. I go to the project variable. So I go to projects, I right click, configure, parameters. I find the variable name. The variable name is server. So I go back to my environment variables and I type in server. Then I type in the value that I want to use. Remember that I showed you in the SSIS Visual Studio that the package was using value of server 2. I'm changing that through this environment variable to server 1. We click OK on the screen, and we go back to our configure of the project. I need to link this variable, the server variable, to the environment. If it's not linked, it won't use the value. So in this window, we will link the project variable. Let's see right here. In the set parameter value window, select use environment variable radio button. And then the drop down, make sure you select server and click OK. Notice that you will see, well, you don't have it here. The value will change on your screen from whatever value you had given it. And mine was server 2 to the name server with an underline. That tells me that this is now linked. If you don't have the underline on the value, let me see if I can circle it. If you don't have the underline right there on the value, then that means it's not linked and it will not use the variable from the environment area. We also need to set up the references. Add the environments that I created. In this demonstration, I created environments 1 and 2. And if you don't add the environments here, you will not be able to use them in your job. So let's click OK to get out of this screen. Go ahead and create your job. In the job, you create a step to run the SSIS package after adding the package link. But still in the job step properties window, click on the configuration tab. Notice parameters, configuration managers, advanced. Click on those, the parameter, the configuration next to package, go to parameters, select your environment, 1 or 2, and then click OK. Let's do a demo on this. Okay, let's go to SSMS. Wrong one. There we go. Okay, let me show you a couple of things here. Erin, do you see my SSMS right now?
I do see it. Yeah, I see it with Studio. You're good.
Okay, great. If you wanted to create the catalog, which I have already created, so it's grayed out right now, you can see create catalog here. That's how you create it. I named it SSIS DB. This is my catalog. Rebuild index is my package with the project rebuild index. I've been created environments 1 and 2. Let me show you what's in the environments. Environment 1 links to value server 1. Okay, value 2 links to value server 2. So this is 2 different servers on the same laptop. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you through the job that I'm going to start the job on server 1, but it will run and rebuild the indexes on server 2. Now we had in the presentation showed you screens on how to do the configuration within the project. You have parameters. See that I have linked my value. Here's the 3 ellipses that I showed you. And we have use an environment variable. I did my drop down. I only have 1 variable right now. If you had many, you'd have to select whatever variable that was. The default is normally whatever is in the package, which is this laptop 2. But I'm going to be using the environment variable. So that means the job, when I select it, will be using whatever variable I have within my environment. In references, I've added both of my environments, 1 and 2. Pretty easy to add. You just go to add, you select it, and you add it. Let me show you the job. So the job's name, rebuild indexes. Let's go to steps. I put my package in there, my SSIS package. Now I'm going to go to configuration. See environment 1. Well, I want to run it on environment 2 this time. So I'm going to switch it to environment 2. If I unselected this, then the value would be brought in from the SSIS package itself. But since it's selected, the value will come from the environment variable that I set up. Something that I have noticed that caused problems, I had another DBA come in and actually type the value in this field, which can happen. When that happens, this value that is typed in will override everything. So make sure when you're changing your environments that your value is actually set and you see an underline, which means it's linked to the environment. Okay, so we're going to environment 2. Okay. Let's run it and show that it is in environment 2. Take a few seconds to rebuild the indexes. Environment 2, let's just show you what we've got. We've got the AdventureWorks data warehouse. So there's a few indexes there that it's going to rebuild. It finished, great. So back to environment 1. I want to look at the report of what environment actually was run, just to make sure that I ran it on environment 2. So I look at all executions. I look at overview of the last one that I ran. Notice it says environment 2. Great, that's exactly what I wanted. And server is 2. Okay, that's what I wanted. Well, let's switch it to 1 just to prove that we can. So I'm going to switch it to my server number 1 and actually run it on server 1. Go to configuration, go to environment, go to 1. So now I'm selecting my server 1 and I say okay. And I'm going to rebuild my indexes. Nope, not new job. Yep, start. Wait for it to finish. This should be faster because this is not the data warehouse. This is the regular AdventureWorks database, so less indexes. All right, let's go up to projects. I right-click, go to reports, standard reports, all executions, and pick the last one, overview. Yay, environment 1. That's exactly what I wanted to show. And notice that the variable has changed to environment 1. So it used my environment variable, which is exactly what I wanted it to do. All right, back to PowerPoint. Wrong one. There we go. Now, something that I have over time found is the permissions between the servers. You have to make sure that your service account that is running the SQL agent on the central server has privileges to run the process on the target server. Now, what I normally do is I run all the SQL Server agents under the same service account. Now, you can't really do that security-wise between production and development QA. So something, and I'm going to go back to, let's see, back to my screen, not this one. Whoa, craziness. I want to go to here. Nope, here. I want to show you services. I want to show you where you can find the service account. If you've never been to services as a DBA, services is your friend. Go in here and you can see SQL Server 1, SQL Server 2. This tells me the service account that it's running under. This is on my machine, so I created a service account for the agents called Mitch SQL, and I'm running both agents under the same service account. Now, if I wasn't doing that, and you see the service account Mitch SQL, I need to make sure that Mitch SQL has permissions on server 2. Let me show you. To be able to run whatever code it is I want to run, or do a select if that's what you're doing. So we go to security, logins, and you'll see Mitch SQL here. And I've given this account, service account, permissions to do a rebuild of index. Hopefully that makes sense, because it's a big stopping point for many people that the permit is not working. Why is my job not running on the second server? And it's always because permissions. So check your permissions, and let me get rid of the services window and see if that's one of the causes. Memory or CPU. Which server resources are being used? Well, that depends. That's always our answer for everything in SQL Server is it depends. SSIS is an executable that will run on the server it originated from. It is not run in SQL Server memory and CPU. It is its own executable. Again, SSIS executable does not use SQL Server memory and CPU. It's separate. So if you do a select statement and job A is created on server A, but goes to server B to select the data, then the job is started on server A, the SSIS executable is on server A using memory and CPU. The process is running on server A. However, a link is set up to server B to run the select statement and then bring back all that data across the network back to server A, and processing happens on server A. Now for maintenance, and in our case, we did the rebuild of indexes. The SSIS job starts on server 1, server A, but we want to rebuild on server 2. The SSIS job starts on server 1. The SSIS executable is on server 1, but the rebuild is on server 2. But the finish of the job is back to server 1 again. So it depends on what type of SSIS you are doing. Normally it's a select, bring it back, do some processing, and that means you need to add memory to the centralized server. But if your memory is from backups and reindexing, then you need to add it to whichever server is lacking the resources. Where will the job execution information be stored? Well, as we saw in the demo, the job execution information is stored in that central server. So you have all the information right there in one simple report. You can see exactly what environment variables it came from, what environment it ran from, what was the code. But there's next steps that you can take this to. You can stop right there and you have a centralized environment. Or you can create a database with a table that stores all of the information plus on error information, or when the pre-execute or the post-execute, when did the SSIS start? When did it finish? Any warnings? You can post all that into a table. I'm going to go a little bit into this, and I'm going to have a demo on this as well. If you take your centralized server to the next level, you need to create procedures. So first create a database, create a table, create procedures for each event handler that you want, and you can keep statistics for that. Also create a procedure to delete the data in the process control log table. And I usually keep statistics for a month. The reason we want to do the deletion of data, or archiving as some people call it, you don't want the table to grow forever and become quite large. So make sure you create a procedure to delete the data monthly or daily or however you want to do that. Then you create your procedures for your event handlers, and then you call the procedures from your event handler. So you create the database, which you just go to SMS, create the database, create the log table, and I have the code. All of the code for this is on GitHub, and so feel free to use it. It's just a normal table with an identity column, and we can get information such as server name, the database name that it's running on, the package name that's executing, the error message if there is one, any notes if there are any, and the timestamps. Here's one of the procedures that I created for on error. And I will show you how to link it to the event handler. Again, the code is on GitHub. Then we create the event handler, which I will show you how to do. This is in Visual Studio. There are many different event handlers that you can execute a SQL task under or create. On error is used when the calling package actually fails. The errors bubble up to the main template, and then we'll send out the on error and execute the SQL task. On information is when an event is raised during validation execution phase. Post-execute, executed before the package ends. Pre-execute is executed before the package starts. And on warning, when the calling package has a warning, the warning will bubble up and be sent to the table. This slide shows an example of how to map the parameters for each procedure, and I'm going to show you in the demo how to set up the parameters. All right, demo time. Go to SSMS. Let's see, there we go. Do I want SSMS? Yes, SSMS first. There we go. So what I have done here is I've set up a database called process control, and in process control, I created a table called process stats log. Here I am querying the process stats log, and notice that all of our executions, I've been testing this quite a bit. The last two executions are right here. Notice that, sorry, right here and right here. This is pre and this is post, so I'm logging pre and post. There have been no errors, thank God. So for server 2, I ran it and my time was within a second. For server 1, my time was within milliseconds. So this is great to have when querying, especially at 3 in the morning for the DBA. You can say, are there any error messages? No, great, go to sleep. Or how long did my SSIS package take to run? And normally you'll have one to many. You'll have several packages running at the same time in here. So you'll have lots of information, and you'll have to query based on the task name or the execution path or the project name. in the code itself. So I'm going to show you one of the procedures. And feel free to use these procedures. I put them on GitHub. You can just throw them in your database. Notice I do the insert into the stats log, and then I grab the information from the package itself. And how do we link that? Let's go to the package and see. Within Visual Studio, when you're creating SSIS, there is a thing called event handlers. There are tons of events that you can log. This particular event I'm going to do on error. You did see when I queried the table that I had on post execute and on pre execute showing the times for me, but right now I'm going to show on error. We can use, if I wanted to, project params for the connection string, if I want to do that, and then set up the environment so I can change in environments where I want to log the information, where it be development or the centralized server. On this execute task, let's bring it out a little bit. I'm going to my process control database on server 1, and I'm using the procedure on error 2. Notice there's a parameter. So the question mark is a question parameter that can be passed in. NA is set in stone for this particular one. So I want to go to parameter mapping and see what the question marks are. Okay, the first question mark brings in that project server parameter, which is from the project params. Notice the parameters start at 0, not 1. So when you're looking at the question marks, this first question mark is actually a 0, not a 1. So I have the first question mark, the second question mark, the third, the fourth. I'm bringing in the source name from the system, the task name from the system. All of this information is from the package itself. And if there is an error, then it's going to grab that error system. There's tons of system information you can get. If you want to bring it into your table, just add it into the procedure itself. But right now I'm just grabbing error description. And that's how you would link the event handler. I've showed you the procedures, the table itself, and how to query the table. I like to do order by timestamp descending so I can see the latest and greatest at the very top. Or sometimes I do a top 10 here as well. Here's some references on how to help you along if you need them, on how to create an SSIS catalog, doing parameterization of connections and values at runtime, and how to create these environments. Thank you guys so much for your time. It's question time, but if you don't have any questions, feel free to take a break, wait for the next presentation. If you want to stay on and listen to the questions and answers, feel free. I'm right here. So are there any questions, Erin?
So there's a comment, really. Actually, Lori commented that instead of using the service account, she uses a proxy and a credential specific for agent jobs.
Okay.
Just as an alternative there.
Yeah. Great idea, Lori. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So yes, friends, there is time to ask questions, and actually your session is the last one in this track. So
okay.
No rush at all. And if anybody has anything that they didn't type in. Okay, so there's a question of what are the innovations in SQL 2019?
Well, that's a great question, but not part of this presentation. For what I understand, I know that, are you talking about Visual Studio 2019 or 2019 SQL Server?
That's a great clarification. Yeah, so if you could clarify in your question, because we could talk for a while about new functionality and features.
Yeah, and I might need to get help from Aaron on that one because I didn't study that one.
The specific to SSIS is the clarification.
I thought this would become a big data cluster session now.
Right. Specific to SSIS, no, I did not see anything different between 2017 and 2019.
Okay.
Well, I will be on for the next 5-10 minutes. But again, thank you guys so much for your time. If there's any questions that weren't answered, but you have questions while you're trying to set this up, feel free to email me at Michellea@gmail.com. And I do have all the slides and code in GitHub. So feel free to steal my code. Don't reinvent the wheel. I always say that.
Yeah, you can spend a lot of time trying to do something that someone else has already done well.
Exactly.
And it's usually not worth it. No offense to anybody else.
Not at all.
And just if you want to, while you've got your information on the screen, if you want to check out the chat, there's a few comments in there, just a little bit of feedback. Right. No specific questions though that I'm seeing.
Chat.
And I'm sure everybody's busy putting in the session evals.
Yes, let me drop that into the chat.
Oh, thank you guys.
Again.
Very sweet. Yeah. Oh, there's a question in the chat I saw. Why don't you use proxy counts for access to remote servers? Well, there you go. Lori had mentioned that earlier. Great mention there. Using certificate and proxy accounts for the remote servers. Oh, and then there was a lot of, didn't display that demo. Thanks for catching me there.
We got it. We got it. All good. So I did drop the link for the evaluations into the chat in case anybody doesn't have that handy. The conference really appreciates the feedback. Speakers especially really appreciate the feedback, both
good
positive and constructive. Correct.
Yes, be constructive, please.
Yes.
Don't just say it was awful. Say it was awful because of this.
Because you did not speak about big data clusters.
That's right.
I would also argue that even when you say it's great, like what was it that was great for you? What did you find? Yeah.
What did you learn?
So there's another question of how is it recommended to switch between like a development and a production environment?
That is a great question. Two different things. One, you have to worry about security between your production and your development environment. So your SQL Server agent should be running on 2 different service accounts. When you go from the centralized environment to the development environment, make sure that your SQL Server agent for the centralized environment is set up in permissions for development, for whatever permissions you want to be able to do. Now, if that's a select statement, just give it permissions for the select statement. If it's a re-indexing, give it the DBA permissions. On production, you have to be careful and make sure you don't give too many permissions to the SQL Server agent, just in case somebody hacks into, and I've never seen anybody do this, but someone hacks into that service account and gets into your production. So you want to limit as much as you can what the service account can do in production, but you want to allow it to do whatever the SSIS job was created to do. I hope I answered that for you.
If not, he can follow up.
Yep, any follow-ups.
All right, let me just take the opportunity to say thank you very much again, Michellea, Kathy, Aaron, Redgate, and
Redgate.
Yay! And of course, also to all of the attendees and other volunteers that helped make this happen. We are super psyched how well everything went today, how great the feedback is, how attendance turnout was. So I personally couldn't be happier. So thank you very much again. And I'm pretty sure we will have a second edition of that somewhere down the road. Not committing to any dates yet. William was trying to push me to it, but no.
Go,
He's
William.
tricky that way.
We got two more sessions in track 1 and track 2 coming up after that if you want to stay around. Otherwise, thank you so much again. Have a great weekend, and I see you all on the Twitter or wherever we may meet soon, given that there is no way to meet us in person soon. But anyways, thank you.
Thank you, Ben, for setting all this up. And William, wherever you may be.
Well, this will end up in the recording, but he's walking his dog.
He's allowed. Michelle, you have another question that I'm just going to keep bugging you since you're still here. Where
That's
is
great.
it recommended to manage the parameters?
Say that question again?
Where do you manage the parameters? Or where is there a particular place?
Yes, there is.
That's better? Okay.
So in your project solution, there's project params. If you double click on that, it brings up a tab for you. And this is all of the parameters for the entire project. So all packages that are listed can use the project params. You can also do parameters within a package itself by right-clicking. Wait, let's see. Yep. It's not working. Oh, because I'm in event handlers. Got to be in control flow. Right-clicking, going to variables. But these parameters would only be for the package you're setting it up in. So I like to set up project parameters because it's for the entire project, and I can control them through environment variables.
Can you do that? Can you dynamically manage those in a file?
You can, yes, but I have not done that. So I can't answer to that. What I have done is the SSMS. Where's my SSMS? There it is. Nope, wrong one.
Looked a lot like SSMS, but
they all look the same.
So close.
All right, so what I did was I do these environments, and I'm pulling the project variable names in. So there could be 1 to many here, and I set up my values in these environments and then link the environment to the project and the job. Yes, you can use a file. I just haven't done that, so I can't answer to that question.
Cool. So many options.
Yeah, you don't have to use
Like
server
everything.
here. You can do like a database. You can type database. You can type, if there's other project parameters you want to change, you can do that with this type of environment, which is really cool. You can change it on the fly. The other thing you could do, let's just go here, configure. This is all of the project parameters, and it can be, you see server here, but if I've had several project parameters, you would see a list of all of them. You could type in different values here instead of linking. You can just type in the new values each time. Unfortunately, when you're running your job, you're not sure what those values are. So I like to keep it contained within environments. So I know that normally I name them production, development, QA. So I know those servers, like the server it's running on, is actually development, is actually QA.
Got it.
Thanks for the questions, you guys.
Yeah, thank you to all the folks that attended. I know it's a Friday. I know if you're across the pond, it's late. So we definitely appreciate you making time.
Erin, is it lunchtime for you?
It is lunchtime, although I had one of my kids bring me lunch while you were talking.
Oh, that's great.
I know.
Kathy, thank you so much for coming and being at the presentation. I see you there.
Great job.
Thank you. Erin, you said there was another question?
There is. So Lori said, can you create the same project by environment so you don't have to keep changing it? Does that, Lori, do you mean like, can you create one and then like copy it? Or I guess I'm not Yes. Lori's saying, can you create a project and then basically copy it to other environments?
Create a project. Well, you would deploy that project to each environment if you wanted to. The reason we're using centralized environments with the variables is so that you don't have to deploy the code to each individual environment. You want to maintain all of your code in this one centralized environment. Especially for DBAs, we don't want to have to go to several different servers to see the code. The great thing about the code here as well, and it's something I learned recently, you can see all the different versions of this code, and I can go back a version if I want to and restore this one. And so restore to selected version. Well, right now it's not letting me, but normally you click here and it'll check the box and you restore to the selected. Oh, probably because I have this selected. Oh, well, anyway, there is a way to do that and go back a version. But it's cool to see all the different versions that you have.
Oh, so Lori says, I meant create the project 2 or 3 times. So like rebuild user index dev, rebuild user index prod.
Yes. So what I do is I deploy it several times with different names.
Got it.
So I'd have rebuild user index prod, dev, and then I have environments set up instead of under rebuild index. Oops, I'd actually create a folder called central or not. Great folder. Thank you. And spelling. Central. SSIS or environment variables. How about we'll say that. And these environment variables, when I create them, will be under environments. Let's just create one. And then I've got to set up the variable. Name was server. I put that type in string. Oh, now I got to type that big long name that I have. Top to, I really got to rename my laptop to something easier. 6S. Anybody want to hack this baby?
It's the first thing I do when I get a machine.
Oh my Lord. Okay, so then I have server 1. Okay, so now I can link this centralized environment variable to any of the projects. So let's say there's rebuild index prod, rebuild index dev. I can now link this one anywhere. Whereas with these, I can only link to the package it's underneath. Right. So it's sometimes easier when you create one dev environment and you just have the server, and then you can link it to whichever one you want to link it to. So that's kind of cool. And again, if you don't link it, then it will not show in the job. So when you go to waiting for it. Again, 5 of them are going to open. Okay, so when you come into configuration, this environment drop down, if I did not link the environment, then it will not show here. You won't have any environments. And like I said, another problem I ran into was at 3 ellipses. Somebody actually came in and typed a value. I'm going to mess it up now because I feel like it. Oh, see what I did? I put in test. Even though the environment's clicked, this will go to test machine, which there's no such thing. Notice it's not underlined anymore. Notice it's bolded. Somebody messed it up. I can't go back and erase that. I can't do the value anymore. I have to create the job entirely. I got to recreate it.
That's no fun.
No. And it's happened to me several times. So make sure you keep your developers out of production in the centralized server. Something I've learned. So I'm going to rebuild the job on the fly. Spaces. All right, steps. Any other questions while I'm doing this?
Not yet.
Okay. I'm just playing around now with the environment.
Let's see what you can break. Wait to
Let's see what we can break. That's so much fun. Oh, I selected one. I know I did. There. Oh, did you notice that when I didn't click it, there's no value here?
Mm-hmm.
And then when I click my environment, it links it.
Yep.
There we go. Jobs rebuilt. Normally, it's not that easy. Normally, there's like 10 steps and you've got to rewrite all of them.
Right.
But in this case, it was just an easy one.
All right. I'm not seeing anything else come in.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Feel free to email me. I am always around, and have a great weekend.
Yeah. Thank you so much for making
Thank you,
time
guys.
and putting all this time into pulling this session together. I hope
Kathy?
it was fun in a weird and twisted way, right?
Well, a lot of this I had done with my job, my prior job, so it was all in my head. I just needed to put it down on paper. And
Yeah.
Kathy helped review some of the slides and show me what I did wrong. So that was very helpful. And thanks, Erin, for stopping me and getting me to show mother environments.
Oh, no problem. No problem. You're good. You're good.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.